Danny Nichols, welcome.
Yeah, welcome.
Dude, I'm super stoked you're here. Thank you for being a part of this.
Thanks, you. This is awesome.
This is very, very cool.
This is a different world right here.
It is for both of us, and I'm stoked to be able to do this because we're just going to have a chat. We're spitballing because there's a lot of cool stuff that I'd like to talk about, and there's a fair bit that I know, and there's a lot that I don't. But Danny Nichols, welcome. I like to call this the Mark Schuline Passion Project because I get to talk passionately about stuff that I like with people that I like, doing really cool stuff for the world, and you're that guy today. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This is really cool. I mean, you're somebody that I look up to, and we've gotten to know each other a lot over the last, year.
Yeah.
And this is cool.
Super neat.
Yeah, thank you for having this passion.
Oh, well, thank you for fitting right into it. So it's really interesting. I don't know if we've ever talked about this, but your name kept coming up, and it's one of those like meant to be, if that sounds corny or cheesy, but some mutual friends, like the way we came to connect was not the way that I thought. If you remember mutual friend Terry Romine, who was working on me for a very long time, action sports, chiropractor, sports doctor that knows everybody from Huntington, goes, Mark, you got to meet this guy, Danny Nichols. You got to meet him for like a couple of years. And it just, cool, sounds great, never really happened. And then we connected through Whitney Erickson, who I've known since she was like a little girl, and she's super close with you, which we'll talk about, and works with your organization, and she's a stud, and I want to give her big props, and I love her nickname, Wild Nerd Whitney.
Wild Nerd Whitney.
She's the best. And so you have a really interesting story, and that's what I want to capture today. Like, it's not to frame it. I think there's a lot of layers to the Danny Nichols onion, and we're going to focus more on some layers than others. I think we could go at length about your pro surfing history, which is rad. And as we were talking about before, like that was my aspiration forever, and was never, ever in my cards to be that. I was just never that good, not even close. But so I'd heard your name for a long time, so it's really fun that we're here doing this. But there are parts of your story that are really amazing, and there's parts of it that I know little bits and pieces that we're going to dig into, if that's cool.
Yeah, let's go.
Let's go. All right. So I'm going to start with a question.
Okay.
So we just had a coffee next door. It's not quite as interesting, but if we were having a coffee together, which we have, on Main Street, Huntington Beach, Surf City, maybe out at Java Point in front of Huntington Surf and Sport, how come everybody knows you? What's the story? What's the history? How does that, every single person that walks by is an industry person. You're getting up to see them. They're happy to see you. And it's like a good exciting connection with lots and lots of people. What's the story?
Well, I grew up on Main Street. I grew up longboarding. I was basically raised on the north side of Huntington Pier when Wind and Sea was still...
Wind and Sea Surf Shop.
Wind and Sea Surf Shop was still on 6th Street in PCH. That was like where I went. I got dropped off there in the morning. I spent all day, all summer long there, surfed north side.
This is probably after the surf theater was gone, huh? Or was it still there? Remember the surf theater? I grew up going to all the super seedy, epic surf movies.
I feel like the talking about the Surf Museum or the Surf Theater? Okay, yeah, I think the Surf Theater was not there.
Got it. I'm aging myself here. All
right, Wimpy's was still there. I remember Wimpy's. But yeah, I grew up north side. This is probably 89, 90, 91, 92, and rode a longboard and surfed in some contests and stuff, and was sponsored by Hurricanes Bar and Grill. And
who gets sponsored by a bar and grill at how old? 12 years old?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
They were really supporting longboarding and the Huntington Beach longboard crew, and I was a part of that. And so I just kind of grew up on north side, and I went to Huntington High. And so I just grew up down there, and then I worked at Huntington Surf and Sport. Yeah. And so I'm a product of Aaron Pye and that whole ethos of the customer is gold.
But so you're a surf kid starting early in the heart of Surf City. Like when you're talking the 90s, that's the peak of surf. Like it's big biz and you're in the heart of it. And you are growing up as a longboarder, and at some point you got into shortboarding, and I think that was when you got to high school. There's a good story, and I got to say that there's there's two good podcasts that I've heard you on. There's probably other ones, but one is Late Night with Chalky with Jay Larson and Lyndon, and that's awesome. That's really focused on your surf world and even in your industry. So if anybody wants to get more on that, that's a great one. We'll talk more about it too. And then when we get into your more business side, there's another one with Mike Miller and Boardroom Sessions, which is another great pod that focuses more on the later part of your life and business, entrepreneurship, and philanthropy. And we're going to talk about that stuff too. But so you're working at the surf shops, then you get into the industry, right? I'm jumping a little bit. We'll get back, but like you end up being an industry, not just kid, but you end up being an industry guy. You get jobs. You're worked for some of the biggest brands. You share a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, let's not share that yet.
Okay.
Let's stay young. What was it like growing up in Huntington? Huntington has a mixed bag. My office is in Huntington. I grew up surfing. It's an interesting mix, and you have high end, low end, everything in between. What was it like growing up there for you?
It was pretty cool. I mean, like Casey Wheat and Billy Webb, Bobby Knudsen, Bud Lamas. Yeah. Those were like all the guys that, I kind of surfed with and kind of fell in line with. They were the older generation. They were looking after us youngsters and,
looking after, were they good influences?
Yes.
Good.
I mean, maybe there was a couple late nights here and there, but they were really good influences because they didn't want us kids to have some of the same experiences that they had, and so they kept a short leash on some of us. Huntington's pretty wild.
For sure.
The 80s and the 90s. I was young, so I don't remember a whole lot of the 80s. I have memories of it. Yeah. But then, the 90s is really where I kind of came into my own, and then the 2000s. And at that point, you're going through a transition, and there was a lot of remodeling, and it was becoming more commercial. Yeah. But there was still a pecking order, and north side of the pier was still really territorial. And so you kind of had to pay your dues, and you surfed the inside, and then you slowly got to work your way to the outside, and then you had to, wait for waves. And
yeah. But I would imagine growing up in Huntington in the surf at the level that you were or coming into, and you're spending time with some of the big hitters. Newport, Orange County surf, for the most part, as good as a lot of the surfers are, a very small percentage go on to have surf careers on the world stage of surf. A lot of them go into industry because the industry is based here, and people dabble with it and have some success. You're one of them. But it's also a lot of people that have that skill kind of go down another darker path. Right, we've all seen it, and we can name people all day long that unfortunately went down that path. Some are with us, some aren't. How did that play into your life at all?
Yeah, I mean, I had to grow up early. Just some circumstances or other. I was kind of on my own at 12. I was bouncing in and out of friends and families' houses. And
hold on, can we stop for a sec? So I have a 12-year-old boy. I almost can't fathom what that would be like, or how you manage that. How do you manage? Can you dig a little deep? I have a 12-year-old son. It's impossible in my mind to think of what that's like.
Yeah, I mean, I have an 11-year-old daughter and a 14-year-old daughter, and my wife and I talk about it all the time, just like, wow. I mean, I do feel like it was a different world back then, and the freedom was a little different overall. I think clearly everybody spent more time outside, and you kind of came home when the street lights came on. But family did the best that they could, right?
Yeah.
With the tools that they were given, and some circumstances played out, and I had an opportunity to live with my grandma downtown, and she made that move so I could go to Huntington. And at that point, I was so free to kind of do whatever I wanted. That type of structure was really hard, and I had some very generous friends and their families, and I spent a lot of time at their houses, and
so you're both a really good surfer, and I'm guessing a really good couch surfer at that time, right?
I was. I lived in 26 different places before I graduated high school.
Hold on.
Some of those were boats. Some of those were in a garage. Some were, family's house, friends' houses. Yeah, it was just wild. I mean, look, my mom and I have a great relationship today, and she raised me by herself, and she went through some challenging times, and I know it's look, man, I mean, we talk about it. It was hard. There was a period there where she was getting healthy and working on herself, and I was doing what I could do, right? Yeah. And like surfing, Main Street, and some of those people that I talked about, Jay Larson's another one that was a huge influence. And a lot of people saw that I had something, and they just kept me on a path, and I just kept following. And
what's really interesting, if I can jump in, is that there seems to me some continuity there that I don't know if you see it that way, but the village came together for you. The village doesn't come together for everybody. You must have had something, personality, attitude, whatever it was, that attracted people to support you. And as we go further into your story, that hasn't changed. Like, you're a collector of people around you that are super impressive and work with you, for you, around you. So I don't know if you see it that way, but it seems like a trend that probably, especially, and I'm thinking back to some of the stuff I've read and heard all the way through your business and entrepreneurial life, that was similar too. It's like you seem to be very much of a, from my interpretation, a people person. Does that seem,
yeah,
am I pushing on the right button there?
100%. Where the ability to connect comes from, I don't know. I was born charismatic and outgoing, but I was also brought up in environments that really kind of fostered that. I go back to Huntington Surf and Sport because I started working there when I was, I think I was still 16 years old, and they really drove it home. The customer is gold, customer service, and so anybody that walks through that door, you're not trying to sell them something, you're trying to get to know them. Where are they coming from? Are they local? Are they visiting? And you're just trying to give them this really authentic experience. So when they leave there, they have this feeling like, wow, that's the best shop in the world. I want to come back to that. And it's not about buying stuff, it's the people, And so Linden, I mean, I can name all the managers, and it starts with Aaron Pye, but that was a huge thing. And so that always stuck with me.
And that's why that business is still hyper successful today, 30 years later.
Yeah, longer. I think
it's probably more than that.
Sorry.
And what's ironic, and just kind of a funny side story, I started, I've been retail better part of my whole life, still today, and customers gold. I mean, our team is gold and customers are gold. Some of the words we live by, but my first job, and I worked there for a long time, was Surfside Sports. At 13, I was the boogie board rental guy. And then I migrated into the store.
That's cool.
Back when it was down at Newport Pier on 23rd Street. So I grew up in that same kind of space. Yeah. But yeah, it's all, I always say it, and I tell my kids and my team, you'll always remember your best coach, teacher, or your worst coach or teacher, and everybody in the middle is kind of vanilla. And I'm always like, take what you learn from both. Don't be this person, emulate whoever was your best. And there's an interesting comparison I'll make here, and I think you'll take it right. I had the opportunity, I've got to know Bob Hurley over the years.
Oh, yeah.
There's nobody, I came away from an opportunity to walk the campus with him and my kids. He walked us through personally, a total Bobism. Nobody else does that. Bob did. And I left there and I was like, I want to be like Bob. Like, it's been one of my, in my head mantras. Because everybody wants, hey, Bob, come see this. Hey, Bob. And Bob remembers everybody's names. Like, it's super impressive, and he's still that way authentically every day. You have a lot of that.
I had the good fortune to be able to work for Bob. And so I got to see it firsthand, and same thing, right? Like, Bob's a very special human, and you feel good around him. I mean, I don't want to sound corny, but you feel like you can just be yourself.
And he does that intentionally, authentically all the time.
Yeah, that's because I believe that's how he wants to. That's how he wants to live. That's how he wants to feel, and so he's gonna put that energy out there. And
I run my business a lot like that, based on what I learned from him. He's one of those ones I hang up on the wall right here. And there's another one, I won't name him, who was over here, and I do everything in my power. There's 2 people over there, not to do anything that they did, because I never want to feel the way that those 2 people made me feel.
Well, everybody's an example.
Everybody's an example.
Yeah. And I tell my kids that. I go, just study the room. Everybody's an example. Who do you want to be like, and who do you not want to be like? And, don't hold anything against anybody, but just go, no, I don't want anything.
So you started learning a lot of this under the tutelage of those mentors, of those people at Huntington Surf and Sport. So your family, it sounds like, was some degree external. You had family support, but a lot of not family was external. Your village was external. The people that you were being inspired or influenced or taken care of by were surf industry or surfers or people in the community.
Yeah, so my whole family grew up in Huntington Beach, and my mom moved away for a while. I was born in Palm Springs, lived a few years up in like Lake Gregory area.
We said 26 homes by the time you were how old?
Graduated high school.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah. It is what it is, right? It is what it is. It's just the way it was. I'm really grateful for it now, because it's given my mom and I a really special platform that there's a lot of life in there, and there's a big opportunity for us to unwind things that we get to see and not harbor or carry, but
what else, if you don't mind, what are the lessons, or what are the things that have influenced your life based on that time, those challenges of what you went through, 26 homes, couch surfing, how has that impacted you, and how does that affect you today?
Well, I believe I'm a resilient person. I believe that I have a really optimistic outlook on life. I've been to hell, sat at the edge there numerous times, not wanting to continue on. And I've had the very opposite of that, which is just this explosion of gratitude and purpose and wanting to. I'm a beacon of light. I am a beacon of God's.
Hallelujah.
I recognize that today. My whole journey to get to this point was just schooling for God to say, "All right, bro, you ready to serve? Here we go." I fully believe that. I went through a period of intense meditation. I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 years ago now. Really committed to a practice. Getting up at 4:30 in the morning, dropping in for 45 to an hour. Going about my day, and then dropping in for 45 to an hour at night, and I was just going deep. And this voice, so loud, so clear, said, "Wake up. Wake up. You can come back to me in the fourth quarter. You have way too much to offer society right now. Wake up and go serve." And I snapped right out of meditation and went, "God, what was that?" It was just the weirdest thing, right? Okay, there's been a few moments like that in my life where I was just like, okay, there's something much bigger here at play. And, look, from my high school days of figuring it out to, graduating high school and, surfing professionally and doing some of that stuff, I went down a really dark path. You know, I had, you know, it is what it is. Drugs and alcohol were my solution for a long time because I had a really hard time. I just had a really hard time with myself, and that always shut the noise off until it didn't, you know. And I was really fortunate to be able to do a 180 and get into a fellowship that can, without blown anonymity.
Understood.
But that process right there was really important because it really helped me heal a lot of things. I'll tell this story because this is another one of those like God moments. I was at Hug, and I was there for 28 days. And I missed my brother-in-law's wedding. I was the best man, my wife was the maid of honor, and my daughter was the flower girl, and I was at Hug. And I was like, you can imagine how I was feeling, you know, this is the net result of my life's actions. Here I am, I gotta deal with, you know, that side. You know, it was no longer anybody else's fault. You know, it was my fault. And, you know, that was a belief that I had growing up because I was just kind of a product of my environment and whatever. But I was sitting out over the bluff on that sidewalk below Hug that kind of goes out towards the corner of Superior and PCH, overlooks kind of Jack in the Box.
Yep.
And I was like, I was really having a hard time, and I was just like, God, if you're out there, if there is a God, like, give me a sign, please, man. Like, it was all cloudy, like it was gonna rain. I'm like, just part the sky or something, like. And a few moments later, I had this like overwhelming sense of peace, like I had never had. I was like, whoa, like I was thinking, like, am I bipolar? Like seriously, like the shift from like that really dark place I was in to this like freedom. I was like, oh my God. And I remember I went back up and I was just telling everybody all this stuff. And then that night there was a meeting down at the bottom of the hill there, and we stepped outside of the hospital, and I looked up and there was one patch of sky and the moon was right in the middle of it. And I just went, oh my God, I'm never gonna question God again. Like, something has been guiding me this whole time. And, you know, my past is my past. It was there for a reason. Everything my mom and I went through and our family went through, like it all happened for a reason. And, you know, I don't question God anymore. It's a crazy thing, but I you know, I'm flawed, right? I got things I have to work on every single day, and I come up short constantly, but it's just that constant surrender and just being of service, you know?
Well, that's an incredible story. I had chicken skin that whole time. So thank you for sharing that, because I know it can't be easy to share that, but it's really, again, knowing some of your story and not all of your story, like a lot of that was new to me. So thank you. Especially when you look at the totality of, you know, your, I think 43 years so far, and what we hear about the 26 schools before you graduate high school.
26 homes.
I'm sorry, 26 homes. And then going through
living spots.
Yeah, got it. And then going through this, and I don't know if we need to talk about it, but what helped you get from where you were in that dark place to get you to the places that you went to get the help you needed? I'm sure there's a story there. I don't know if we need to talk about it at all. But
it's my wife and the family, for sure. You know, Erin and I started dating when we had just graduated high school. I was still 17. She had just turned 18, and we were kids. We were two kids that were just bonded together, you know, through our own stories and our own experiences to that point. You know, we were bonded together, and you know, we've been together since. And so we did the later half of our teenage years together, our 20s and our 30s and our 40s. And, you know, she's a brilliant woman, you know. She saw the potential in me before I could see it. And,
she was right.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's...
Hey, you've surrounded yourself with people for a reason.
Well,
it seems. Whatever that.
How it comes together, the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, you know. But at my darkest point, you know, she held my hand and like kind of walked me through it. And
that's a great story. It's really amazing to see the resilience and what you've done, because what we're going to get to next is that service and what you're doing with it. So it's such a cool, compelling story, and that's why I'm glad you're here, and I appreciate you opening up, because I know it's tough, as we can see. But it's such a good story because of where you were, where you've come from, and where you're going. And we'll talk about where you're going, because it includes a bunch of cool stuff that you've done to get here. But I mean, who doesn't love a transformation story like that? Especially in spite of the elements that you dealt with and have powered through and have, I suspect, created a ton of the drive to do the things that you do, over and above the fact that you seem to be a naturally driven kind of type A person, being supported by a very driven, brilliant, determined woman and family. I know there's a lot in her family. Her family is your family. I've heard you referred to before. Again, it takes a village, right? Your surf family, your wife's family. It's pretty incredible. And, you know, if we were going to talk surf, like, you're friends with the who's who in the surf industry. And in my world, like, those are kind of the iconic people. You know, I worked with Bob, and, you know, there's a long list of those folks, which is really, really neat. Where I want to get to is what's brought you to this next level, because you've gone through a lot to get there, but, you know, it sounds like these aha moments, these epiphanies, these God moments. And when we talk offline, like, whether we're in a group or elsewhere, I've heard you use terminology, both when you're talking about maybe faith and these experiences, but also when we talk about things like open water. And you know the data, and you know, like, you have the terminology for a lot of these things from, like, the health and wellness side, some of the people that you surround yourself with. You know, we were talking earlier, like, you know the terminology and the systems within the body and in wellness and mindset and all these things, as well as the data points around the things that are really important to you, which is, we're going to go straight into open water. So part of the reason that we're here today is we had a meeting not too long ago where we were able to, which was really cool. We got the folks from Open Water and the folks from the Ben Carlson Foundation together, and we just spitballed and shared ideas. And I asked you a question, and then it went from there, but I'm going to ask you the same question. The listeners, the viewers may not know what open water is. And from the title, it can mean a lot of things. I love the title. I love the name. The branding is like right up my alley, right? What's the elevator speech that you give for open water? Not the mission, not the vision, but like, or it can be whatever you want. But what is open water?
Yeah, I mean, in a nutshell, we are an organization that supports the health and wellness of veterans and first responders through unique training programs, fellowship, community, and open water ventures. How it started, if we rewind the clock back to Veterans Day 2019, Kyle Kelly, who's our co-founder, he and I spent some time in another organization that was teaching veterans how to surf. Kyle's from a landlocked part of Texas up in the northeast by Tyler. And his only experience with surfing was riding foam boards on 1 to 2 foot waves. And, for me growing up surfing, my heroes were like the complete package, the watermen, you know, like I really looked up to people like Mark Healy and
big wave,
just big waves, spearfish, like really immersed in like that open water. And I always felt like surfing was just such an entry point, but there was so much more to it. And so for Veterans Day 2019, we just said, all right, well, let's paddle from Catalina to Huntington. I've stared at that island since I was a little kid, and I've always wanted to paddle it, but I'm so scared of sharks.
Oh, that's funny.
Still, I'm very scared, right? So I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. But this opportunity came, and we actually bought some bark boards from Surf Tech and shipped one to Tyler, Texas. And Kyle was training in his family's 200-yard pond, just back and forth, putting little trash bags on the back for like drag, and then, you know, he'd go venture out to some bigger lakes and kind of paddle. And the goal was to, you know, mentor Kyle across the channel, and the support system was, you know, a handful of local first responders. We had some marine safety officers, some police officers, and then we had some local watermen, Vince Longo from Futures, Joe Scaturo.
Joe Beard, as I like to call him, from Surf Tech.
So there was a few of us, and there was 11 of us. And we were really lucky. We got to stay at the Wrigley Institute. And
in Avalon,
no,
is that right? Or is that in Two Harbors? Or the Isthmus, as some people know.
The Isthmus, yeah. And so we got to stay there, and, you know, we did the paddle. And it was a spiritual experience, to say the least. And
can I stop you there for a second? Because I want to talk a lot more about the channel and open water and the crossing, all that. But let's go back to the why veterans, first responders, why create this organization. And you know a lot. I'm gonna share one of the data points that you shared with me and blew my mind. You said that there's like 40,000 organizations supporting veterans in the United States.
It's probably a lot more. There's 40,000 plus that are supporting veterans. And
why do we need one more? Why open water?
That's a good point. So one of the things that Kyle and I, one of the epiphanies that Kyle and I had when we were spending all this time together, you know, we saw what the military was going through, and you know, he firsthand experienced it. You know, there's a lot of stress, overstimulation, and trauma.
Overseas in combat?
Yes.
Okay.
So Kyle's retired. Kyle got into some heavy conflict in Iraq, and was part of a traumatic event, and took a pretty heavy explosion, and was pulled out of that to go start his healing journey. And he's a fucking phenomenal human. But anyways, we spent a lot of time together. We just talked, my story, his story. I mean,
how did you get connected with Kyle?
So we met at another nonprofit organization that was teaching surfing, and we just hit it off. And our family has a ranch in Texas, and Kyle was living in Northeast Texas. And so he and his daughter Haley would come down to the ranch for Thanksgiving when we were there, and we would just spend a lot of time together, hunt hogs and fish, and just like have these type of conversations. And it goes deep, you know, like that's the beautiful thing about Kyle. Like, it's just, when you're going to get into a conversation, we're going to get real. We're
but
I
talk about the real stuff. That Kyle and many veterans and people that have been through traumatic situations like that, they're not going to open up to many people. Like, you've got, this is a Danny Nicholsism, I think pixie dust that you have.
I believe that my story resonates on a level where, you know, I mean, like Kyle and I, it was very authentic, you know, and Kyle will tell you, like, he didn't have a whole lot of friends outside the military, you know, and, you know, my relationship with him was kind of one of those first relationships where it was like, hey man, I'm from Northeast Texas, you're a surfer from Huntington Beach, like, we shouldn't be mixing, you know. but we had this, the way our brains work, like we just kind of
I think you referred to it as kindred spirits once before.
Kindred spirits, 100%. And we had this like aha moment where we were like, whoa, our first responders are dealing with the same stress, overstimulation, and trauma that our military faces. And these guys are facing it day in and day out for 15 to 30 year career. And, Kyle will tell you, you go on deployment, you experience what you experience, you come home, you have all these resources to integrate. You can go to the VA, you can go to 40,000 plus nonprofit organizations. There is a lot of support for our military. And there wasn't a lot of support for our first responders for a few reasons. It's still a very tight-knit community that is serving, right? And so a lot of people aren't going to talk about anything, right?
Why is it?
Well, so one of the blessings of there's no fucking blessing in, excuse my language, but one of the positive things that have come out of the last 20 years of conflict, being at war, is you have a lot of individuals that have served, that have come out and said, hey, it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to talk. Suicide, 22 a day. There's an epidemic there.
22 a day of whom?
Of veterans.
In the U.S. right now, 22 a day.
And I don't know where that number is tracking today. It could be more, it could be less. I don't know, but I know that has been the theme for a very long time, and
it's an unbelievable number for the people that protect us, support us, go do things that none of us can conceive of, and they come back, and that's the end result way too often.
Yeah,
unbelievable.
It sucks. Trust me, it sucks when you get to that point. And this is stuff that Kyle and I talk about all the times, because our path and our past, hey man, like we've been there. Luckily, there's been a lot of support and people and purpose and stuff to shift your perception a bit. But
so I think one of the things you mentioned, or you were starting to, is that it's okay to voice it now, where maybe in the past everybody was stoic. You wouldn't talk about.
People talk about PTSD, and look, like I want to just full disclaimer, I did not serve, right? So I'm not going to speak for our military community, and I'm not a first responder, so I'm not going to speak for our first responder community. Like, I'm going to share my experience and what I know from the relationships that I have with,
people in that space,
our people that serve. Go back to World War I, World War II. It was, get back to work, shell shocked or whatever. You get back to work, and then as you just kind of go along the lines, PTSD comes about, and I don't know. It's. I don't even want to go down that road.
You got it.
'Cause we could sit here for a while, but
so
it's just a thing that, like, I know from some of the work we've been doing at Open Water, stress physiology and why.
Well, let's talk about that.
We get to that, but
I promise you, we'll get back to the channel, because as you know, that's one of my passions as well, and I love what you guys do, and you have one coming up. But let's talk about the tools that Open Water employs to support these folks that you're referring to, what they've been through, what they struggle with. You've put together an incredible array of people doing stuff that, I hear about these people, and you're like, oh, I got them on, they're working with us. They're designing programs for us. Who are some of these people, and what are they doing?
Yeah. So just to go back real quick.
Yeah, sure.
So the reason for Open Water was to bring our veterans, military community together with our first responders and our local waterman community, or our local community, right? There was a holistic there was a holistic path of service, if you will. A lot of the experience that our military, especially our veterans, have had and on their healing journey, they're a very good bridge to our first responder community. There is a instant bond there. It's really easy to take the mask off when first responders are talking with combat veterans. There's trust there. And, you know, when you bring the waterman community together, which was what we started with, there was also that, because like you said, there's that type A, there's that adventurous kind of, I don't want to say elite, but there was this adventurous side where, you know, you kind of have the same mindsets. You just might have had different paths to go out and do stuff, but there was a lot of commonality there, and water was just the medium that brought us together. And what the water did was it allowed us to have this cool environment to do what we were doing. But what was really happening is we were taking the masks off and we were just sharing. We were talking about stuff. And that was very healing, right? That was like, okay, you get me, I get you. You know, at the end of the day, I know at least one person's got me, and that you know, that support system kind of starts. So it was really important for us to make sure that we were serving both our military and, you know, veterans and first responders. And this element of the community has really been this like, whoa, because what we didn't realize at first, but what we're realizing now is there's a humanizing component to this, because not many people in the community really know what our first responders are going through. I mean, we have a pretty good idea what our military has gone through because it's been so documented, and like I said, there's so many organizations, and you know, if you go on social media, there's a lot of veterans that are talking about, and there's so many different modalities for healing, and it's a lot quieter with our first responders, but
So yeah, so if I can kind of, because I'm on the layman side of it, the veterans and people that serve in the military, they have this kind of, they go and they serve and they come back and they can get whatever services, whatever. Regardless of what the conditions were, it's a different cycle. First responders, police, fire,
EMS, our marine safety.
They're there for long periods, and they come home for a day or two,
Yeah.
and then they go back, and they're always operating. You know the scientific terms for this stuff, but they're never turning off their they never get that downtime
Right.
to reset or they live in it.
Well, not only that,
Which is like a high level of stress and whatever other
Yeah.
physical, physiological.
well, all the events that happen, for the most part, are happening in the community that they live in, you know? And so, you know, if there's a gnarly accident or other, you know, there's a really good chance that, you know, those individuals are driving by that scene day in and day out, taking their kids to school or whatever it is, you know, and so there's not a whole lot of relief. And so what we found was that what Open Water, one of the great opportunities for Open Water is to educate the community why it's important to serve our first responders like it is to serve our military. You know, there's nothing wrong with these guys, right? Mm-hmm. Like that's the thing that sucks. Like you have an organization that's serving first responders, and people are automatically going to go to like, oh, mental health, this and that, and it's like, no, man. Like when something hits the fan, and I'll use a perfect example. Say we've got a couple police officers sitting here right now, or a couple firefighters sitting here right now, and something really bad happens right there.
They're gone.
We're going to run the opposite way. They're going to run right into it.
Yeah.
You know. And
hallelujah. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Thank you. And it's a eye opener for a lot of us in the community, because when we call 911, we expect them to show up and be perfect. We have no idea what 3 previous calls they just went on, or what the previous 48 hours was like, and if they've gotten any sleep. I mean, so when a a rig pulls up on scene and some of the guys might be a little edgy, or, police officer shows up and he might be a little edgy. Like, we just are like, oh, what's wrong with them? Instead of having that compassion and empathy to go, are they okay? Like, where did they just come from? Like, let's give them the respect and the support. And so for me, I'm like, hey, you guys serve us, so it's our job to serve you, because in the event that something really bad happens, we want you guys to be the best versions of yourselves so you can handle that situation, so we can have this wonderful life that we live in. That it's crazy, and I think that's been a bit of an eye-opener for us, because there's a lot of people in the community that have gotten involved with open water that have said it. They're like, wow, I never thought to think what that person just came from when they show up on a scene.
Yeah. You know what I always think of, and this character is painted in a bad light, but it's from a movie, and this is Jack Nicholson in A Few Good Men. He's up there, does the best monologue known to film, and he's talking. You don't want to know, like, we stand on the wall and you're going to question how we do it? You don't want to know what I do. We provide the safety and security that you live by, and it's always made, like, people are putting themselves in harm's way for us all day, every day. And,
we live a pretty comfortable life.
We do. And we expect them. And I think part of the challenge is that there's this, I said it before, there's this stoic nature. You see these individuals, male or female, and they're like impressive. You look up to them. We've always kind of, I think, always had that, if there's a police officer behind me, I'm instantly nervous if I'm driving.
You feel the heat.
Yeah, you feel the heat no matter what. I drive a big slow van. But you have a level, I grew up with a level of respect and care, and like, they're always impressive. I think in my mind, they never show their true cards, and I think that's part of the challenge, right?
Well, they're humans.
They're humans.
I mean, look, I know there's a ton of training, but there's a lot of stuff that happens when they're on duty that you don't always go to school for. Yeah. And so, like, you might have a little bit of training on how to handle that situation, but you're really just going through the experience and trying to de-escalate or control a situation as best as you know how. And we put everybody in uniform on this, this pedestal that they've got to be so perfect. And, there's a huge opportunity for Open Water and other organizations to come in and say, hey, like, we can come in from the private sector and offer additional resources to help you if the government hasn't put those systems in place. Yeah. And so that's kind of how it works. Nonprofits usually come in first because there's less red tape, and they can get in there and be of service and do things. And then once stuff gets to a point, then you'll see governments and states and all that kind of fall. But
so let's talk about, what do you? Again, I promise we will get back to the channel. What does Open Water provide?
Yeah,
we know that you talked about. There's some events, and funding and fundraising. But what are the tools that you employ to help these folks that deserve it and oftentimes need it?
Yeah, so we work really close with Shift, with Brian McKenzie and Emily Hightower.
Pretty big names there. If you're in the fitness, at least in my world.
100%. I mean, they're larger than life to me, but they won't think so.
Got it.
They're just doing their small part, and they've poured their life into this. And I met Brian back in 2018, and I took his online Art of Breath course. And after I took that, I was like, wow, okay. I had no idea about breathing. No idea. Just the simple things on the performance side and down regulation side. I had no idea.
A lot of people have heard of like Wim Hof, but Brian has a whole different and very, very well respected course and focus on this and other tools within that.
Yeah, and it's interesting because there's a lot of people out there that teach breathing, but there's not a lot of people that teach the physiology behind it. there's a ton of breathing out there that's going to make you feel very euphoric in the moment, and release some chemicals where you're like, oh, I feel great, but then 2 hours later you're going to feel really dysregulated and be like, I got to do that breathing again to feel great again.
A healthier form of drug, right?
Yeah, potentially. This is what I love about Brian. Brian has been calling himself out for 20 plus years along this journey, because he will learn something and he will implement it, and then he will learn more about that and go, wait a minute, and so he's just constantly been
improving, or pivoting as he learns more.
Yeah, and so having Brian McKenzie and Emily Hightower and their company Shift a part of Open Water, we've created this transformational breathwork pillar that offers their art of breath, and it offers skill of stress. And art of breath is geared a little bit more towards performance. You learn how to shift gears through your performance or what you're going through. And Emily's skill of stress is very focused on down regulation and recovery.
Yeah. So if I understand correctly, this works with the community you're serving, but it's highly utilized by professional athletes.
Yeah, I mean, look, executives, athletes. Yeah. I mean, the list goes on, and why Kyle and I were like so passionate about working with Brian and Emily is because what they're offering was really important to those that are serving. Because when you put the uniform on, it's performance, and when you take the uniform off, it's recovery. I mean, that's just layman's terms. It's just simple. But there's also a lot of down regulation tools that you can use while you are in uniform. Imagine going, okay, like this is gonna be hard for you and I to imagine, right? But like we're in uniform, we're a police officer, right? And we get a call, we gotta go pull someone over. Like, where does your heart rate go right now?
Yeah, right.
Where does your mind go? And you don't know exactly what you're pulling up to, and maybe you do, maybe you don't.
And you're doing that all day long.
Yeah, and so there's a level of hypervigilance, right? You have your nervous system, your autonomic nervous system, all those fun things, sympathetic.
Yeah, you're way over my head now.
Right?
Got it.
But you're revving, and when you're constantly doing that, like there's a point where your nervous system goes, hey, dude, we need to chill out, and then it just drops. And it'll drop into a rest and recover state. But if you're not aware of that and you don't know it, there could be a misunderstanding there that there's a problem, depression, stuff like that. And what we're really offering here is tools to incorporate in real time, and then also like take some pressure off yourself. There might not be anything wrong. Your nervous system might be just regulated, and you just have to do a deep reset practice or get into some breathing gears and kind of.
So what you're doing in a nutshell, maybe to summarize this piece, is you open water with those that you've brought into the fold, which talking about that in its own right would be really interesting. How you, again, proximity is power. You've connected to all these people. And again, just like in entrepreneurship, you probably didn't know where you're going to end up. You just identified, you and Kyle are like, hey, we should do this thing.
Well,
and here you are.
Hey, that's exactly what happened.
Right?
We did the channel crossing, and we were like, oh my God, that was really, really cool. What do we want to do next? Well, let's start with breath.
In typical entrepreneurial mindset approach and type A, we're not done. We're just starting. What do we do now?
Yeah, no. And here's the kicker of it all, right? So we did the channel crossing on Veterans Day in 2019. March 2020, the whole world shut down. So here we are starting a nonprofit, January 2020.
Perfect timing.
Right? And in June of 2020, there was this one little week of like, the whole country lets up, and we scheduled an Art of Breath. And it was awesome. It was really impactful, and we learned a lot from that. And it was like, okay. So now we're taking step 2. We're getting into transformational breath work, and then we did a retreat, and the retreat up in Lake Tahoe with Jay Wild was like the brainchild of Morgan Hostery, who's
another rock star athlete,
who's like our open water head coach. Yeah. She saw an opportunity for some of our paddlers to get more training, and she said, "There's no better place than like let's go up to Tahoe and get
Tahoe
our
Waterman
butts
with Jay, yeah.
kicked for a week with Jay Wild and Tahoe Waterman." Yeah. And so we went up and we piloted a retreat, and it was like, okay, this is insane. So we have like since taken that forward, but to back up, in addition, so we have 3 pillars. We have transformational breath work, which is skill, stress, art of breath. And then we have water immersion, which is waterlogged. That's all the stuff that Morgan teaches. It's all the free dive stuff and all the stuff around CO2 tolerance. And the thing that went, for us was, you have this introduction to breath and, stress physiology. Well, then you add water, right? And so where can you really test yourself and put yourself in an uncomfortable environment for a lot of people, which is water, And so Morgan has developed this like really cool curriculum that will stretch people's edges in the water, because they're going to face some fear, and they're going to realize that when you're holding your breath underwater, it's not your body that is giving up. It's your mind saying, you can't do this. You need to breathe. Like, this isn't going to work. It's the weirdest thing. CO2 sensitivity creates a really interesting little dichotomy up in your head, because your shit comes up, right? Like, I can't do this. What am I doing? Get up, breathe. Yeah. So what she's developed is teaching individuals to relax. And that is such a perfect, it's so perfect for those that are in uniform, because they can get into these stressful environments, and that they know that they can relax. They can drop into some CO2 tolerance.
Well, I mean, I love the ocean, and I love the water. And for so many people that don't have the experience, like, the ocean is a healing, cleansing, it can be a very spiritual place.
It's the great equalizer.
It's the great equalizer. Well, let's talk about that, because the channel, when we say the channel, for those of us that live near it, we grew up staring across, we look west and we look from the beach, we see an island out there if it's clear, 30 miles away, and for most people it's just a long boat ride. For some of us, it's a super compelling adventure, a very challenging one at that, and we can go on at length. But for you, it's been a path, and you started to talk about using this as a tool. And you also, I'm going to bring it back around, you used the term with me the other day offline, misogi, Japanese term. You want to talk about misogi, because for a lot of people, what you're doing, I believe, is exactly that. Do you agree?
Yeah.
What's a misogi? And then
I don't know a lot about it, but what I do know is it's doing something hard once a year, and the only rule is you don't die. That is not the intention.
I think rule 1 is you have a 50% chance of succeeding.
Right.
So a 50% chance of not.
Yeah.
And rule number 2 is don't die.
Rule number 2 is don't die, yeah.
Now,
we didn't know anything about a misogi when we did the channel crossing. For us, it was this quest to find out. It was this fact-finding quest to see what we were made of and who we are. And, there's a positive form of trauma bonding that happens when you do a channel crossing with some people.
So talk about that. So talk about, one, why that channel, what does it stand for your group of folks that you're supporting, and they're going through the training with that as their goal. And then I want to ask you about your personal experiences in that channel.
Yeah. So the first year we did the crossing, it was just to raise awareness. Let's go and do this. We were raising awareness for mental health issues in our military and first responder communities. The success of that was the springboard. Here we go. We're becoming a nonprofit. when we mentored Kyle across the channel, the goal from that moment was that he was going to mentor another veteran. And then the year after that, that veteran was going to mentor. And so we were
exponential growth.
We were going to create this ripple effect of, veterans and first responders, mentoring veterans and first responders. And so that kicked that off. Our good buddy Jake Green in North Carolina was the one that Kyle reached out to and said, all right, buddy, you're up. You're up. And, Jake is U.S. Army retired. Keep him somewhat anonymous in what he does.
Got it.
He winged it. This is a through knee amputee who had a very successful career and is a very strong and resilient human. And he's like 32 miles on crossing, all right. And so he was doing a lot of training in a lake in North Carolina.
What kind of craft was he on?
Stand-up paddleboard.
And so he's an amputee with a prosthetic.
Yeah. And so, look.
I love a good underachiever, right? I've got I'm going to paddle 32 miles off the couch to some degree with a prosthetic.
Yeah.
No problem. I love that. That mindset is.
I know. And he didn't even really train. He did some training, but he didn't do a lot of training. And this, you can paddle in windy, flat water. You can paddle in a lake with wind and it's still relatively calm, right? But you can go out in a super glassy ocean that is just wild and warbly, right? And so that happened the second year. So we left the island. There was so much reverb off the island that Jake couldn't stand on the board. And Morgan was his mentor. And so she was kind of just right by his side the whole time. And like 2 miles into it, he was like, F this, and threw his leg on the boat and then sat down on the stand-up paddleboard. And the stand-up paddleboard he was riding was Vince Longo's Molokai board. It was this 14-foot super rockered out board, right? And we had relatively flat conditions.
So not ideal craft.
Nope. And he just sat down and his paddle was a normal stand-up paddle and he just gutted it out. And I mean, Morgan will tell you today, she's like, this was one of the most impressive things I've ever seen. And this is a woman who has accomplished a lot in the water.
Let me press pause for 1 second. For anybody that hasn't listened, and so I've been blessed. One of my favorite things to do is paddle that channel. I've been super grateful. I always say, people go, well, what's it like? Well, the distance is usually 30 to 32 miles. The most normal course is open water does 33 from the Isthmus to Huntington Pier. 33, is that right? In the best 33 miles on the ocean, no matter what kind of craft you're on, is a long day. It's not like running a marathon where you can stop and sit on the curb, call an Uber, if you stop paddling, you're a buoy.
Mm-hmm.
If you run a marathon, the road is always predictable in front of you. It could be a hill, whatever, but it's predictable. The ocean can come up and hit you in the face 10,000 times across that channel. There's nothing guaranteed, so there's nothing more daunting than that channel, in my opinion, which is what makes it such a big, awesome experience, because it's really hard. We won't know until we leave the island what the conditions are going to be for the day. And it can change multiple times.
Yeah.
There's an adage with the Catalina Classic, which is the longest standing race across the channel, prone paddleboards. The longer it takes, the worse it gets, right? Because typically the wind's going to pick up later in the day. It's going to hit you in the side of the head until you get it done. And so there's nothing easy about it, even in the best of conditions. Then you take people that are maybe not that well trained from Texas or wherever, maybe with prosthetics and maybe just not that trained up. I mean, I've learned the hard way. I don't do that channel without being trained up, because it is a very long and very challenging day.
Yeah.
So for these folks, it just makes it that much more challenging and that much more rewarding. But that's a big ask.
It's a big ask. And that's where the retreat came from, because after that year of Jake having to sit down and cross the channel, Morgan just was like, okay, we need to get, if we're going to continue to do this and we're going to continue this mentoring process, we need to
get people trained.
We need to strategically put a retreat 12 weeks before the crossing, so we can really launch into a training schedule, start with a pretty intense week, and then you have 12 weeks to follow that training and be really prepared for the crossing. So after that year, Jake and his mentee, Brooke Thomas, who was out in the East Coast in North Carolina, we took them up to North Carolina, we took them up to Tahoe to train for a week. And they took that experience back to North Carolina for the others that they were training. And we saw the positive effects of that. Jake ended up doing the crossing, sitting down. He didn't even bother to use his leg, but we had a canoe paddle. So he had a smaller paddle, and he knocked it out. And so did the people that did it with him. So it's interesting because we didn't start this organization and go, okay, we're going to have 3 pillars and we're going to do this and we're going to do that. Everything we have done has just come from experience. What worked, what didn't work, what do we need to incorporate? And so this year.
And you do this is a Veterans Day event.
This is on Veterans Day.
You also do a 9/11 event, which we'll touch on real quick later.
Yeah.
But Veterans Day event, how many people this year?
We have 50 paddlers. 38 or 39 of them are solo. And 10 or 11, I think, are going to do a relay.
How many of them are vets versus first responders? Give or take.
It's a pretty balanced mix.
Got it.
It might be 60-40 first responder veterans.
Got it.
Some are still active duty.
And it's a long day.
Yeah, so we are not a race.
No.
We are a journey. This is a spiritual experience. What we tell them is you have no control. You have no control over the ocean or the elements. You have to surrender. The only thing that you can control is your attitude and your actions. You can't control the wind. You can't control the swell. You can't control the current. You have to surrender to it. And that is a perfect metaphor for life because we have no control over people, places, and things.
Yep.
We can only control our attitude and our actions. And so,
how well have you been able to control yours out there? Have you ever had any challenges?
Yeah. So I had this thing. So the first year I did it on prone. And the second year I'm like, okay, I got to do it on prone again because anybody can do something the first time. But to be able to say that I did it, I got to do it a second time.
And for anybody that's wondering, prone is laying down and paddling it like a surfboard. And you can go up on your knees, but you're using your arms just like this. 33 miles.
33 miles. It's very uncomfortable. The second year I did it on prone, it was one of the worst experiences of my life. I made it to shore and was like, I'm never going to touch a prone paddleboard again. I just hate life. I don't want to do anything. This is stupid.
If you felt that way at the end, how were you in the water?
Dark.
I
was cramping. I overtrained. The first year, I didn't know what I was getting into. I trained, but I just was running on this excitement of oh my God, every inch that I paddle is new. I've never done this before. And
ignorance is bliss a little bit on first year.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Second year is usually the hardest.
It's the hardest because you have the expectations you got to manage, and I overtrained and it kicked my butt and so on. And then
and also just to shine a light on it, even with all the training and the knowledge that you've gained from the folks around you, it's still really stinking hard, and you still found yourself in the pain cave or the dark spot or whatever you want to call it, right?
Yeah.
In spite of,
yeah. So year 3, I did stand-up.
Which is brutal,
It was one of the most spiritual experiences I've ever had. I love mountain biking, and when I'm prone paddling, I can't get the right nutrition in that I want. And so when I went to stand-up, it was very much like mountain biking for me. I could eat a peanut butter and jelly sandwich if I wanted to. I could just get different nutrition in. And we had good conditions. So let's just caveat it with that. We had good conditions.
98%. If you have the training in, 98% of your day's quality is based on the conditions.
Well, that's a great segue to last year. We left the island. Again, I did it on stand-up. And we left the island, and first 13 and a half miles or so, it was quartering off of our left shoulder. So we had really stiff Santa Ana winds. And
what's some of the worst possible winds for the channel?
It's the worst winds for the channel, for crossing a channel on a
Yes.
human-powered craft.
Yes.
we had weird swell, reverb, cross chop, boat wake. For 13 miles, you couldn't.
So it was terrible.
It was terrible. And I went
and
dark.
Terrible equals hard and slow.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I gave up. I gave up like 3 or 4 times. I mean, I was telling myself, why am I doing this? I don't need to do this. It's stupid. Like, was this my ego? Like, I got nothing to prove. Like, I'm out of here. I'm going in the boat. I'm just going to root everybody else on. Hold on. Here we go. So Morgan, as brilliant and beautiful as she is, she paddles up next to me, and she was on an outrigger canoe because her role last year was really to just mentor the whole group and be able to go, from the front to the back of the pack and just be available for everybody. And she paddled up to me, and I'm like, I can't do this, Morgan. Like, I'm done. I'm over this. This is stupid. This is the worst thing. Like, and she looked at me and she's like, Danny, if you get on the boat, that's the only thing that you're going to remember, because eventually we're all going to get to shore. And when everybody is hugging and high-fiving and celebrating this massive achievement, the only thing you're going to think about is that you got on that boat. So she goes, if you're going to get on any boat, you can sit in this canoe and I'll take the stand-up and we'll just paddle together for a while. And whatever that was, I just looked at her and I was like, you're right. And I just got into some breathing, and we just sat quiet next to each other and just paddled, and it shifted everything for me, and that's how it goes, right?
I'm trying to think of the term I was looking for, but something along the lines like when the student needs the professor, they show. That's a terrible version of it, but I mean, she said the right things at the right time in the right way to God love her.
And she's quiet, paddled right next to me. I mean,
she spoke to your soul.
Well, yeah, and this is a woman who has been there and done that. And if anybody is interested in Morgan Hostery, just go to Amazon Prime and type in her name, and there's a very impressive documentary of her and another girl soloing the Hawaiian Islands on stand-up paddleboards. And that's just like one of her
many exploits.
Yeah. So
another quiet assassin.
Quiet professional.
Yes.
Yeah. She's a blessing. She's been so awesome, and she's like my go-to when I'm like, what do you think? What should we do? And she has so much experience and resources.
Proximity is power. I'll say it all the time. You are who you surround yourself with.
Yeah.
I think it's a big testimonial or testament to you. Those are the people that you attract, and they're there for a reason, right? Sometimes to support and work with the organization, sometimes to support and work with Danny.
Well, yeah. We're fortunate. We have some really good people that work with open water.
So what is it like on the beach after everybody's completed? Well, before that, there's two things I want to ask you about, and then we'll jump to that. But real quickly, what do you guys do mid-channel? And what do you call this crossing? It actually says it right there on your water bottle. But what do you guys do mid-channel? And then we'll talk about what that red sticker says.
So Veterans Day is on 11/11. And so at 11/11, we circle up, and we circle up and we drop a rock, and that rock symbolizes a challenge, or
each person
drops a rock.
Mid-channel.
Roughly. Yep.
Deep. Land is a far stretch on both sides.
Yeah. 11/11 usually tends to be between that 17 and 20 mile mark. So you're literally you're dead center.
Right there.
Yeah. And we circle the boats up as best as we can, and then we circle all the individuals up the best that we can. And the highest ranking officer is the one that usually speaks. It doesn't always go that way, but so far it has. And then we'll drop a rock, and that rock symbolizes a challenge that somebody's ready to let go of. And it's pretty apropos. At 20 miles in, you're ready to drop a rock.
Yeah, you can imagine.
You're ready to let some stuff go.
Yeah.
Vince told me the first year, he was like, you're going to experience a year's worth of emotions in nine hours. This is how it is. Whatever's in there that you haven't dealt with, you're going to deal with it.
Yeah. It's powerful.
And it's great, so that when you get to shore, that sense of accomplishment, you look back at the island and you're I don't know, there's a transformation that happens there's a level of confidence that kind of kicks in where you're like, you know what, if I can do that, I can do anything. And that is a huge nugget for not just surviving, but thriving in life.
Yeah.
You know?
It's so cool. It's such a great thing that you guys do and how it's morphed and evolved and what it is. But tell me what you guys call it and why.
So the rusty anchor.
Rusty anchor.
So
sometimes I feel like a rusty anchor.
So Kane Johnson is the godfather of the rusty anchors. And after he did the second crossing, but after he had done that crossing, we were talking about like the retired, fire and police guys. And he was like, those rusty anchors, like they'll be so slow, but man, they won't quit. They'll just keep going. And I came back to him a few days later because I couldn't let it go. I was like, Kane, there's something to this rusty anchor. Like, can you define it for me? Like, what does it mean to you? And he came back and wrote the Rusty Anchor Creed. And so what ended up happening is, like, those that solo our crossing get patched in as a Rusty Anchor member, and they live that creed. And it's a badge of honor. It's something that you've got that not many people do. And for the people we serve, that's a very special symbol. And look, like we live in an area where we have access to a lot of this stuff, and we do a lot of paddling, and there's a lot of people that we know that paddle, but for a lot of the people that we serve, that's a massive accomplishment. Yeah, and almost. It is, and it might be the only time they do it, or they might come back the next year and mentor somebody else, and then that's the only time they do it, and then they go back to their community and they, spread the good word of open water and bring other people in. So it's a huge intersection point for us where one door closes in an individual becoming a rusty anchor, but then another door opens where they become a mentor and bring a new recruit through. And so every year you have this big intersection point because your recruit becomes a mentor, and your mentor can now step back and go, okay, like, carry the message.
It's amazing. I just want to give you and Kyle and the whole team at Open Water huge kudos for.
Well, there's more of us.
Well, I know there's a lot of you.
Yeah, our board, works really hard behind the scenes to make sure that we can get the funding and do the things that we need to do to serve these communities. And I definitely can't go without saying Wild Nerd Whitney. Yeah, we love Whitney Erickson. She's our director of operations, and I mean she's the fabric of this thing. It's her and myself more on the admin side, working with our board members to make stuff happen, but she's really the rock that is just yeah. Well, and one more feather in your cap that if you look at the people, again, this is when I look at you, it is a collection of these world-class people that have gravitated towards you for some reason. They've been compelled to work with you, whether it's Open Water or you. I think it's more you, and then Open Water becomes an area of passion for them around yours, which is really amazing. And I would say that, again, from what I've gleaned, that is one of your superpowers, is your ability to bring people together, maybe without even trying, which is the beauty of it. It's very authentic and it's super impressive. And what Open Water does and who you serve, again, is really, really powerful and super cool. It might be some of my abandonment issues growing up, that I just love people and I want everybody to succeed. And, look, we can do together what, I can't do alone, or one can't do alone, right? Like, it's, there's more to that, and other people have kind of articulated it better, but there's a lot of truth to that, man. I personally don't do well alone. I don't like to be alone, and if we can harmonize energy for a really good cause and we can serve those that are serving us, yeah, that's what it's about. Because something's going to happen, and we need those individuals to be happy and healthy and thriving, so they can take care of us.
Yeah,
when we need them to.
Because we have this platform, I just want to say a giant thanks to everybody that is served by you guys, but all first responders, whichever field that is, our vets, our active duties. Again, they're on the wall, they're doing the hard things so we can live the lives that we live. And I love the fact that you're helping support those that come out of it and need or want to change their direction or improve their position or just thrive after or as a part of what they're doing every day.
Yeah.
So I love that.
Yeah. Well, and it's cool because as a community, we can be there for them.
It's awesome.
Say, hey, you got us, we got you. Like we're together.
Got it. Well, listen, just a couple more minutes, and I don't want to keep you all day, but I think we could talk all day, which would be fun. A couple things, and I always ask this. I ask this at work and at home. If I had a magic wand, Danny, like you get one wish. It could be anything. What might that be?
My one wish?
Your one wish. It could be anything. It could be what you do, your family, the world. Magic wand. It's a big one, I know.
I just
I gotcha.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't even know. I don't even know how to. I don't even know how to answer that.
That's okay.
You know, because everything happens for a reason, and there's a lot we get to learn about ourselves and human nature as a result of that. So I don't know if I would want a magic wand to like take any of that away, but if there's
maybe it comes back to be open to those magic moments, because it sounds like a couple of those have come your way that helped shine a light on what to do, where to go, what the future looks. I mean, to have that view, to not want to change the world because what happens for a reason is a pretty, I think most people would go, oh, I want world peace. Oh, I want, I think it's a really interesting reflection on how you see the world, that no, I don't want it. Things happen for a reason. I think it's kind of beautiful and maybe even surprising, which is cool.
Yeah, there's something much bigger at play here, and I'm not going to interfere with that. No. I am a small little beacon that is doing its part to carry a message that I don't even fully understand yet. Yeah. And it's a feeling, right? Like you get emotional talking about it, but it's a feeling, like you feel harmonized with people, and you just, what can we do, right? Like your energy's powerful, my energy's powerful, we can harmonize that energy. What can we do here that can help, that can be sustainable and can help others? And I think that, we don't know how long we're here for. Shit, I could be gone 10 minutes after this is over, but what's that legacy? What are we leaving behind? Where's that sustainability? And, it starts with the family, and then it's the community, and then beyond, so let's harmonize our family. Let's harmonize our community, and look, man, we're all doing the best that we can right now with the current perception that we have. Honestly, all of us, we're doing the best that we can right now with what we've got. And there's a lot of, I think there's a lot of letting go of things when you can understand that. And there's a lot of empathy and compassion. And support that comes along with that, you know, and it's not, you know, the behavior isn't allowed to be, you know, justified or an alibi. Like, you got to fucking do the work, you know, to be right, because you can't transmit something that you haven't got. You know, you got to see to it that your own house is in order.
Well, I asked you.
Sorry.
I love that. Now, I asked if I had my magic wand, and your soapbox was probably the best answer I could ask for, because it wasn't just I want X. It was, this is the process, which is rad.
Yeah.
And
hey, that's what a channel crossing will teach you. Think about it.
A lot of time to think while you're out there.
That is a journey.
That is a journey.
You know, when you get a quarter mile off of that island, you realize how small and insignificant you are. Those 60-foot boats that are escorting are like nothing out there. Yeah. So that little 12 or 14-foot board you're on, or 20-foot canoe or whatever, it's nothing. Yeah. Right? So, like, stripping away, you know, your ego, like that's what's so powerful about Mother Nature. Yeah. Like, she is going to strip your ego away and go, just follow me, get in line, surrender. All that fear, you
surrender.
Know, like,
it's a lot. That's a topic, or that's a word you use quite a bit in this,
well,
which is
because fear, right? This is my experience, right? Fear so many times has stripped me of a spiritual experience. And a recent example, I went down to go do some stand-up paddling, and I got down to the beach. It was still dark. Waves were flat. And I was just going to paddle out at Golden West and just kind of sup surf all the way down to the pier and back. And I was scared. I'm like, it's dark. There's nobody out. Like, I'm afraid of sharks. So here I am on the beach, like, doing my prayer, and I'm afraid of sharks. And then I'm like, wow, like, am I going to let this fear ruin this, like, spiritual experience that's waiting to be had with the sun that's about to rise? And, you know, just being one with Mother Nature, and fuck it, just go, take a chance. Like, whatever is going to happen is going to happen. And what ended up happening, I had this wonderful experience. Sun came up, there was nobody around, and, you know, when I got back to shore, it was like, yeah.
Glad I did it.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I'm glad you did this with me. Thank you so much. I truly feel like we can go all day. Danny, if people want to learn more about you or Open Water, Inkwright, your business, anything, where do they find you?
Yeah, so you can go to beopenwater.org. You can learn all about us there. You can go to social media, Be Open Water. Our YouTube channel is Operation Open Water. Actually, it might be Open Water, to learn about us. And yeah, please follow us, support us. You can click on the support button to figure out how you can get involved to help or be a part of it. We get a lot of inquiries from veterans and first responders through that, and it's really cool because Whitney or myself are emailing them back like, oh, cool, come join us.
That's awesome. Well, listen, I want to give you big kudos. And one last thing before we go. Our company, Crown Hardware, does a roundup every September for you guys, and we had all of our Orange County stores do it. And I know you're like, hey, when's it coming? But
what's the roundup for?
The 9/11 Honor Challenge. The 9/11 Honor Challenge. So I'm really proud to
present, no way,
a $7,500 check.
Are you serious?
To Open Water from Crown Hardware, and the partnership with our customers all over Orange County that support you.
Dude, really?
Thanks so much for being here. Thanks for what you're doing. Don't stop.
Awesome, man.
Don't stop doing good things.
Thank you.
Thanks, brother.
Wow, it's freaking rad donation, dude.
Proud of you.
Thank you. Thank you for everything that you do too, because you do a lot. I know you pushed all the energy this way, but
it's all you.
We should turn it around. Talk about all the things that you do.
Next time.
We'll switch seats.
Thank you, Danny.
Thank you.